Welcome to the Tank Podcast. In this week's episode, Caroline Issa muses on the heritage and calm, confident design language of Giorgio Armani. "50 years on from its founding, Giorgio Armani feels as precise and expansive as ever. From the beginning, Mr. Armani was one of fashion's great risk-takers, but not for chasing the sensationalism of the time. Think Vivienne Westwood's nipple t-shirts, produced from 1974. Rather, Armani's approach was risky because he refused to shock. For someone who entered the fashion ring relatively late, at 41 years of age in 1975, he committed to building his own design vernacular in slow, deliberate strokes. A softer shoulder here, a muted palette there, an insistence that clothes should liberate the body rather than armor it. The risk was radical in its restraint. Yet success was built season after season, as he offered women a way of dressing that allowed fluidity, sophistication, and comfort, clothes to live in. From the beginning of his career, Armani understood film as both a creative laboratory and a global shop window. In 1980, he dressed Richard Gere in American Gigolo, propelling the louche lounge suit into global stardom. He designed or supplied costumes for over 200 films over the course of his career, working repeatedly with Martin Scorsese on the big but intelligent American movies of the 20th and 21st centuries: Goodfellas, 1990, Inglourious Basterds, 2009, and The Wolf of Wall Street, 2013, movies about status and style. That first movie is particularly relevant as it captures the era that came just after Armani's debut and its permanent transformation of the economic landscape. The 1980s were the age of corporate finance and mass consolidation, in which brands were bought up and melded into luxury groups. Providing a masterclass in Italian disdain, Mr. Armani told Reuters that he had been approached by a German multi-conglomerate, Beiersdorf, in 2005 about a potential merger, but had been too distracted by other projects to think about it. Armani, almost uniquely, remained a proprietor-owned business to the end, like an elegant restaurant that keeps its candles lit and tables full as the streets around it are chomped up by interchangeable chains. Like that image, perhaps, Armani's design language is pure Italy. "Style is part of Italian culture. Style is everywhere," says Alessandra Facchinetti, who Armani greatly admired. What Armani did was to take those existing style codes and give them a clear, personal language. No one else has translated Italian style with the same consistency and clarity. Through those endless calibrations of cut and color, his vision became the lens through which Italian elegance was exported around the world. Facchinetti knows what it means to be seen as a bearer of Italian style. When she debuted her first Valentino haute couture collection in Paris, the Italian papers also noted the reaction of a very particular spectator. In Corriere della Sera, the image is almost cinematic. Mr. Armani rising at the end, crossing the aisle to embrace Facchinetti a scena aperta, calling her unica donna a fare alta moda, the only woman to do high fashion. The image reveals a rare moment of open homage in a system where, as the journalist dryly notes, it rarely happens that in the system we pay homage to each other, especially among Italians. Tricolor pride? Finally. Armani's applause did more than bless a young Italian designer. It placed her firmly within the tradition he had spent his life defining. Until this day, that moment stands as the only couture fashion show he attended apart from his own. To call Armani a language is to acknowledge its grammar. Tailoring, the formal tuxedo, transparency, flou, texture. These are the recurring nouns and verbs that stretch from the designer's earliest collections to the looks kept in the archive today. To feel the fabrics from decades ago is to understand what quality is. What has always set Armani apart is not just these codes, but his refusal to dilute them when trend cycles demanded noise. I believe risk was always part of his thinking, staying true to the same vision over decades, Facchinetti reflects. At a time when change was often expected, he chose consistency and never adjusted his point of view to follow the moment. That loyalty to himself was his real risk. Quickly, fidelity hardened into power. She followed the impressions that had stayed with her since those early years, the looseness of a trouser, the way a tuxedo jacket seems to hover rather than grip, the subtle tension of transparency against covered skin, but tested them against the present. I was instinctively guided by very strong memories of his work that stayed with me over the years, but I wanted to see how they could exist in the present. The idea was to show how powerful his design is. Pieces from different decades can be worn by different characters and still feel right. That's part of his legacy. Perhaps the most striking aspect of the interpretation that follows is how naturally vintage and current seasons fold into one another. What Armani teaches through his work is coherence, Facchinetti notes. His codes are so clear that they stay recognizable over time, without feeling repetitive, connecting past and present. Throughout his career, he managed to remain different while always being himself. That balance is what makes his language translate so naturally across seasons and decades, immediately recognizable as the Armani style. In our era of berserk code clashing and rapid trend cycles, the stillness and certainty at the center of Armani's brand is an oasis, and one that survives him.
To hear more podcasts from Tank, you can subscribe on all major podcast platforms or follow us on SoundCloud. The theme music for this podcast is by Himera.